Today, I want to look at one of the best podcast hosting solutions around, which is Transistor.fm. Let's look at the unique features like private podcasting, like customizable players that make Transistor one of the best hosting platforms on the market. Hey folks, Colin Gray here from thepodcasthost.com with another episode of the Podcast Tools Show. This time around, we're looking at a podcast hosting platform. I'm going to cover all the hosting platforms throughout this show, just to give you the pros, the cons, the ones we like. One of my favorite is Transistor.fm. Now, Transistor.fm has a few unique features which I really like about it. So let's get into it. Let's look at how Transistor works. So the first thing people always think about, pricing. How does the pricing work with Transistor? Transistor was one of the first to look at doing multiple shows. So Transistor has a really unique pricing method in that, unlike the old guard, like Libsyn, Blueberry, Buzzsprout, those kinds, they let you run as many shows as you like on their one Transistor.fm account, and all for one monthly price. Instead, they cap you by downloads. So you sign up for $19 a month, that's their minimum package, and you get 10,000 downloads a month. So you can run as many shows as you like under that. So an example might be, on our account, we have a range of different shows, okay? One of the biggest shows on our Transistor account is, what would it be? Mountain Bikes Apart, actually. So a mountain biking show that I run. So that gets a fair few downloads. That gets, I can't even remember now, but let's say that's 7,000 or 8,000 a month, okay? Takes up a significant chunk of that 10,000 a month. So Mountain Bikes Apart is one show on Transistor that takes up a big chunk of our downloads. But we also have 5 or 6 or 7 other shows on there, which are just little shows that we do for experiments or for smaller audiences. And they might only have like 500 or 1,000 downloads a month. We've also got membership ones on there as well. So within our account, we would quite often have something like you'd have one big show maybe, and then a few little shows that you experiment with. Or maybe you run 2 or 3 bigger shows and actually they share out the downloads. However you like to swap out, you can have whatever combo you like. As long as the total downloads for all of those shows are under the 10,000, you fit into that $19 a month bracket. And even if you go up beyond that, the next tier up is $49, and that's for 50,000 a month. So say you had 4, even if you go to the 49, compared to single packages, like if you sign up for Buzzsprout, you'd have 4 shows, so 4 times the $12 on Buzzsprout, and that would be 48. So with Transistor, if you had 5 shows, it would be cheaper for the 5 shows on the $49 plan than it would be for 5 shows with Buzzsprout, even on their minimum plan. And if you can fit those 5 shows under 10,000 downloads, then actually it's only $19. So it all depends how big your shows are, how many you want to run, and it might be cheaper. I just quite like the fact that you manage all within one dashboard, actually. It's quite nice just having it all self-contained, and the ability to just experiment with different things. Put out a new feed, here's a new feed for, just one season of my podcast. You can do that. You can put it out there, all for the same monthly account. So the multiple shows approach is really nice. And there are other hosts that I'll probably talk about in future episodes that have taken on that approach as well now, but Transistor were definitely one of the first to look at that. Just to talk about their top tier, they do have a top tier of $99, which is 100,000 downloads. So you can go right up to that if you have a big podcast or a network. And beyond that, it's enterprise level. You can talk to them about pricing. But it's similar with any podcast. Even if you sign up for something like Buzzsprout or Libsyn or any of the other single podcast ones, as soon as you get up to a significant download level, a significant bandwidth level, they'll be getting in touch with you. How about coming on to an enterprise plan? So they're all pretty comparable in terms of price like that. Now, 2 features that are involved in those tiers that are worth talking about. One of which makes Transistor right now one of their most unique features, and that is private podcasting. So this is really interesting. Private podcasting essentially means you can do a password protected podcast feed within your Transistor account. So on the $50 tier, the $49 tier, you get one private podcast feed with up to 500 subscribers, I believe. On the $99 tier, you get 3 private podcast feeds. So you can run 3 different private podcasts and up to 1,000 subscribers. Now, these are the way you use this. There's tons of different ways to do it. So it might be that you run a membership site or a community and you want to run a private podcast for that community. You've got 200 paying members for your membership. You basically input all of their emails into Transistor. That'll email them out an invite link and a password. And those people can then subscribe to the private podcast feed, which is linked to the list that you have in Transistor. So it could be, a way of monetizing your show. Give them access to premium content. People that are paying on your Patreon, for example, get access to premium content. People that have signed up to a membership on your website for courses and things like that, also give them a private podcast feed that ties into that. Really nice way to do it. The other way I've seen people doing it as well is employee podcasts. So if you run a company, you have 50 or 100 employees, it's hard for you to talk to them every day or every week even. Instead, create a podcast feed that gives them an update. What's going on in the company? What's the news? What's happening in the coming month? And use that as a private podcast feed because maybe you don't want that content to go out there publicly. So that can be a nice way to use it as well. And even I've seen larger companies with many, many more teams, a manager will do a weekly update for his 15 or 20 staff. And that'll be happening across the company. So there's maybe 50, 100 different private podcast feeds going on within this one big company, all of which is keeping everyone up to date. It's engaging staff, that kind of stuff. It can work really nicely. So that is a unique feature for Transistor right now. They're one of the only ones out there doing it in a really nice, easy way. And you'll get, like I said, 1 on the $50 and 3 on the $100 plan as well. The only other thing that ties into the pricing tiers is the player. So Transistor also are one of the best out there for players. So they've got a bunch of different player options. They've got light mode, dark mode, which is quite nice. They've got binge mode, which means that you can look at the back catalogue. You can put a player on your website that shows the current episode, but also like the most recent 10 or 20 episodes. So people can listen, but also see other topics that you've talked about. It's really nice. You've also got a latest episode player. So you could put that on your front page or put it on your about page or wherever you want. And that always shows the latest episode. Really nice little feature, that. And then you've got a specific episode player as well. So for your episode pages, you can take that player from the Transistor hosting and stick it on the episode page. And it always just shows that episode for those show notes, which is really nice, or just place it anywhere on other blog posts or embed it on other websites, whatever you like. So the player options are great. And on the $100 tier, that higher tier, that $99 tier, you can take the branding off it. So while it's quite subtle anyway, it's not a big deal if you don't take it off. If you're running a much more professional business, you're much more around your brand, growing your brand, taking the Transistor brand off that player, making it look much more white label, can be quite attractive. So it's quite a nice little extra feature inside the Transistor tiers. Final couple of things I'll mention, features of Transistor. One is publish to YouTube. So Transistor make it really easy to publish your episode to YouTube. You upload your audio. They do all that as normal, but they'll also create an audiogram type video. So image in the background, dynamic wave, that kind of thing. And they'll post that to YouTube for you, which is really nice. Nice little feature just as a kind of added extra. Helps to promote your show. Not necessarily always the best way to put something on YouTube, I would argue. Like, who listens to a 40-minute video with just an image on it on YouTube? But hey, it's another way to get out there. So if it's free and easy, you could argue it's worth a try. The support. One other thing I'll mention, support on Transistor. Now, I hesitate to say this in a way because it's probably not going to, as Transistor grows, this will change a little bit over time, but certainly right now, and in the last year, Justin Jackson is one of the founders of Transistor, and he's been so heavily involved in support and helping people succeed. So if you join up with Transistor, and again, this definitely applies to other hosts out there as well. But Justin is really open and he's really visible online. And he's a guy that can really help you grow your show and give you good tips, get in there and really figure stuff out for you. So it's definitely worth noting, even if it's not something to rely on 100% in future. But the support with Transistor is certainly known to be top notch. Last little thing I'll mention is the website and the integrations within. So they have built in, probably partly due to Justin's sort of marketing background, they've built in integrations with some of the email hosts, the email providers that are sort of really sort of prominent online. So ConvertKit, for example, Drip, they tie in really strongly with Transistor. So you can have email sign-up forms. You can make sure people are hitting the website and growing your email list, taking that next step. You're getting their details so that you can push content to them as opposed to wait for them to come to you. And that's all built into your Transistor website as well. So if you use ConvertKit or Drip or a couple of other email providers, certainly worth checking that out. And it's a good benefit of the Transistor hosting platform. If you do fancy checking out Transistor, go over to thepodcasthost.com/transistor, thepodcasthost.com/transistor. That is our affiliate link, of course. Doesn't cost you any extra though, and it helps support the content that we put out. So if you fancy using it, that would be amazing. Big thank you to you. All right, and this is also brought to you by the Podcast Host Academy, which is our resource on how to set up and run and grow a successful show. For example, we have a full course in there about choosing your hosting, about how to set up your podcast hosting when you're first launching your site. We've got stuff in there about how to distribute from there to your directories, how to publish to your hosting, everything you need to know about that side of things, like setting up your website, your hosting, making sure it's all perfect for your launch and for your growth ongoing. We've got courses on that inside the Academy, as well as ones on editing, on growing your podcast, on monetization, on presentation skills. It's all there. Plus, we've got live Q&As every single week. So if you want to get help from Matthew or me or the rest of the team, you can talk to us once a week, ask your questions, get everything answered. Thanks again for listening along to another Podcast Tools episode. I'll see you on the next one.